Yesterday, we went over the latest, released probable cause affidavit. It's from January 11th in the murder of Spencer and Monique Tepe. And something really stood out to me and stood out to a lot of you, and that is allegations, or reports from friends that Monique made allegations that her ex-husband, Michael McKee, who is now charged in her murder, strangled her. Reading between the lines, it seemed like more than one time, but at least once. And that made me think of Brian Bennett, who is our guest tonight. So stick with me. This video contains mature themes and discussions intended only for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello there, my friend, and welcome back to another true crime conversation with me, Gavin Fish, where we like to cut through fluff and sensationalism in true crime. We like to be steady Eddie. We like to be cool. We like to learn as we look at these cases, and if that is what you like, then you found the right place, and I'm glad you did. Thank you for joining me, wherever you're joining me from. I'm sure some of you have already told me where you're joining me from. For example, Miss Chivo's Dragon is saying that she is in Austin, Texas. There we are. Wherever you are, tell me where you are. This is one of my favorite parts. We got St. Augustine, Florida in the house, North Carolina in the house, sunny San Jose, North Carolina, Virginia, Lexington. Take two, Javi. Let's do a take two on that. Lexington, Kentucky, Jacksonville, Florida, Oregon, Erie, PA. We've got Suffolk, UK in the house, and I'm sure there will be more that tell me where you're from. Oh, we got Jersey. We got Niter, Idaho. Is that how you say that? Niter, Idaho. So yeah, continue to tell me where you are tuning in from, and I don't know. I love that part. It's the romper room segment of the show. Ellenville, Nay. Where's Ellenville, Nay? I have no idea, but sounds like a great place. Guys, today we are back talking about the case of the murder of Spencer and Monique Tepe. Columbus, Ohio, married couple, parents of two, ages 4 and 1. He a doctor, she an educator, had a master's degree in education, and they were found gunned down in their house after coworkers and friends called 911 for a wellness check because he didn't show up for work and they couldn't reach him. They couldn't reach her. They said that was so out of character that they needed somebody to check on them right now. And as they were talking to 911, they were on their way to the Tepe's house where they found, sadly, this beautiful couple gunned down. Now, once again, parents of two. They also had a little golden doodle. And police said that the children were unharmed. I disagree. They were harmed. They were physically unharmed, for sure. Monique's ex-husband, a man that she spent just months with before they divorced, a man named Dr. Michael McKee, a vascular surgeon, is charged with their murder. And if we are to believe everything that we have read in the warrants and the PCAs, it looks like he did it. And not only does it look like he did it, it looks like he planned it. He had consciousness of guilt. It was premeditated. He traveled hundreds of miles to do it. And not only that, it seems like he would travel hundreds of miles just to terrorize her. This is a real, at least it appears to me, based on the facts that I've read and the allegations that I've read, this appears to me to be a sleeping with the enemy kind of thing. She tried and tried and tried to get away from this guy. Kind of looks like Mr. Incredible, doesn't he? Like a young Mr. Incredible. But he's not incredible. He's incredibly violent, according to allegations that we've read. Anyway, now what I did today, and let me just while we look at the teppies, let's just see. I don't want to leave anybody out. We got Nova Scotia here. We've got Southeast Georgia near Jacksonville. We've got Chile, Virginia. We got Tigard, Oregon. Thank you for the pronunciation guide there. Louisiana, Cuesta, New Mexico, or Questa, depending on what you say. I don't know how they pronounce it there. In Virginia, they have a town called Buena Vista. It's not Buena Vista, it's Buena Vista. It doesn't matter. Let's see. You got Louisiana in the house, looks like. Southwest Louisiana. We got Ireland, Virginia, Colorado, North Carolina. Yes, as Dr. Grande would say, exceedingly creepy. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Okay, so I have a friend. I have more than one friend. I have many friends. But several of my friends are in the law enforcement and crime reporting community. And when he reached out to me, I would like to take credit to say I reached out to him, but he reached out to me days ago saying, I bet there's a strangulation component to this. And boy, was he right. And he is Brian Bennett. See if I can bring this up. Yeah, you're seeing double of me. Hold on. Yeah, you're seeing double of me right now because I had a conversation with Brian earlier today, a few hours ago. Now, tell you a little bit about Brian. He's a retired South Carolina state law enforcement officer and trainer. He has a particular set of skills. That set of skills has to do with the investigation of fatal and non-fatal strangulation cases and DV, domestic violence. This is one of the foremost experts in DV and strangulation in the nation, and he was kind enough to spend a little time with me earlier this afternoon to talk about the case. So my plan here is to play the recording, and along the way, I'm gonna be checking in on what your comments are. So definitely put your comments. For example, here's a comment. Greetings from Ohio, the Buckeye State, in the house. Lakeland, Florida, North Idaho, Harrisburg, the capital of the Commonwealth, frozen tundra of Brunswick, New York, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Oh, that's where Emmy used to live. And yes, Niter, just a speck along the road at southeast corner of Idaho. So, anywho, when you have comments or questions, please put them in the live chat. Please put GF in that so that I can more easily find it. And we will just go on ahead. And I might pause along the way with your comments. So let's bring this up right here. Let's lower this, and here we go. Brian Bennett is joining me. Brian is a strangulation expert. He is the, what do we say, Brian? The owner or the chief of everything at Clearview Justice Training and Consulting down in South Carolina. You're a retired South Carolina State law enforcement officer, trainer, and you specifically have expertise in strangulation, right?
That's correct. And other like interpersonal violence type issues like domestic violence, vulnerable adult abuse and exploitation, and things such as that.
Yeah, and we met each other. I think you reached out to me originally, watching my coverage of. I think it was probably Micah Miller, but it could have been Madeline Soto. This is the third time you've been on the show. I really love it when you come back because it's very very specific, your expertise. And in this case, the case of Monique and Spencer Tepe. Let me see if I can bring them up on the screen here. This couple was murdered. I think she was murdered with one gunshot wound to the chest. He was shot multiple times in their home, and law enforcement says it's by her ex-husband. But recently, a affidavit of probable cause came out and or was released, and you can see right there. Let me get it right on my side here. That Monique alleged that Dr. McKee would force. Basically, he was SAing her, and she accused him of strangulation. Now, this is a red flag, is it not?
Absolutely. This is a pattern that has remained consistent across the United States when it comes to particularly domestic homicides of women. The entry level or the initial awareness of strangulations being involved in domestic homicides, particularly of women, found its legwork about 20 years ago in California. And since that time, the research and the documentation has gotten more and more proficient and efficient. And what the national research tells us is that non-fatal strangulation is the number one indicator of a future homicide. When it comes to a domestic situation, it's most particularly a homicide of the domestic violence target, primarily women. And when this case came up, it's interesting because we've had discussions off the air, and I've had discussions with many other people. The moment that this case came up, and I heard the initial facts of the case, and there didn't appear to be any type of forced entry, and the kids were left alone. I immediately started telling people something doesn't seem right about this. I mean, other than the fact that it was a weird homicide, but I said I can almost guarantee with 100% certainty strangulation is going to be part of the history of this in some way, shape, or fashion. Now, I didn't know at the moment if it was a homicide side, as we sometimes see with domestic partners, but I knew it probably rested somewhere, this issue of strangulation. And here now we have people and affidavits that certainly point to a very dangerous pattern, which is now led to the death of two people.
So you felt like there was a certainty that strangulation had occurred in this one before you even knew anything about the fact that
Mhm.
it was her ex-husband. It just was strange enough for you to go, there's a precursor here.
Yeah, I've seen this so much, most particularly because of the state that I live in. I'm very keen and more up to date with frequency and everything within our state. But when national stories present themselves, because I'm kind of a bit of a news junkie, not just crime, true crime type stuff, but just news in general. When I see the dynamics of a familial situation where there's this sudden violent death, particularly of a female, and there is some type of intimate or romantic relationship involved, that strangulation, more times than not, strangulation, in my experience, is found to be some pattern that existed prior to the homicide. We actually had a few here in South Carolina in the last few months where I reside, where there were some domestic homicides. And I told people, I said, I can almost guarantee strangulation or patterns of strangulation were going to be part of it. And sure enough, uh, I called and reached out to families of the deceased who hadn't even talked to law enforcement yet, and they confirmed to me that the family had known of patterns of strangulation because the deceased had mentioned instances of strangulation. And sad thing is that law enforcement didn't know about those. And unfortunately, that is rings true with a lot of these cases. I will point out in this particular case in Ohio in 2014, there was a
Hey guys, I'm just going to jump in here for a second, just to interrupt me and Brian. But a question came in from Dandelion, and Dandelion is asking, and we're going to get into this a little bit in the recording, but did he SA her? So what we know is there are allegations, right? There are allegations of it. I'm just going to come over here briefly to the PCA, the probable cause affidavit that we read yesterday. This line right here is extremely disturbing. Monique Tepe had shared an allegation against Michael McKee of forced unwanted sex and of strangulation. Forced unwanted, what is that? He SA'd her. That's what a friend shared, that Monique had shared with the friend, right? So it's third person, but we can't do first person here. The victim is dead, right? So yeah, to answer your question just succinctly, yes, that is the allegation, and it's I mean, this goes without saying, but for a long, long time, maybe even hundreds of years, it was not possible for a husband to SA a wife legally, right? There were no laws against that, but that is what it is. So, according to the friend, Monique told her that he had done that indeed.
Homicide of another girl by the name of Monique, and that homicide was a domestic homicide involving strangulation, and actually was what prompted Ohio to pass felony strangulation legislation in 2014.
Really?
And with other states that have done that, the whole point of passing that legislation was to raise awareness of strangulation, to raise awareness of the dangers because of the association of future homicides with those type and patterns of assault. And um, if law enforcement knew, or if law enforcement knows about strangulation, at least with the statute, you have a mechanism to charge someone on a felony level with the idea to hold them accountable for that action, but also to perhaps provide that necessary separation between that strangler and the person that's the target of their abuse, which would ultimately be the target of a homicide. And
To
to
give her
me,
the opportunity to be able to get away.
absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, she did get away from that relationship. There's the documents and news stories about her ending the first relationship after a couple years. But the one thing about this strangulation form of assault is it sends a very clear message that not only does this person have a homicidal mindset, but it also demonstrates that they like to exert control and keep control. And from
Well,
the reports that I've heard, um, he made himself present in her current relationship and made threats to her
yeah.
even after the relationship was over.
Well, that's actually kind of what I wanted to get into. Before we do though, Ohio is my neighbor state, right? I live in Western Pennsylvania. Ohio is our neighbor. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have strangulation laws on the books. As a crime beat reporter, I see those charges all the time. One of the things that I guess, what is the word that I want to use, disappoints me when I'm covering a hearing. So, for example, on a hearing day, I might go to a courtroom and I might sit in that courtroom from 9 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I might see 40 hearings that day, right? They're just like one after the other, after the other, after the other. And they could be status conferences, they could be arraignments, they could be preliminary hearings. There's all sorts of things. But strangulation comes up all the time. All the time. It's charged so frequently. And of course, this is just anecdotal. This is off the top of my head. But oftentimes, when we get to the sentencing portion of this, and I've sat through all the hearings for the defendant, and the defendant has come to some sort of plea bargain, they drop those charges and they do some sort of like simple assault charge. He pleads guilty to a simple assault charge, and I've actually even heard defense lawyers which, and I don't blame them. I mean, that's part of our system. We got to have good defense lawyers. But I'll hear them say, Your Honor, this is his first offense. Or sometimes it's like their 93rd offense, but this is his first violent offense. And they somehow get the judge to go along with, yeah, we'll go ahead and just drop this. He grabbed her by the throat and threatened her life. He had aggravated assault with strangulation charge, and it gets pleaded down to a simple assault. And then, I don't know, 3-4 months later, I see him in court again. Like there's so much of this. What do we do for to the court system to make them understand how serious this is? Don't drop those strangulation felony charges.
Yeah, ideally, I mean, the mechanism of most states' strangulation laws is not just to empower law enforcement to take action in those situations, but it also should have some component of education that is either required or necessary because of the existence of that statute. We want, I mean, ideally, we want all the parties involved with the criminal justice system to understand the seriousness of this. The law enforcement officers, the prosecutors, and our judiciary. But unfortunately, as you've described, and it's anecdotal, but it's something I've seen as well, is um, perhaps some of our prosecution offices trying to clear dockets relatively quickly. Hey, we see a plea, we can guarantee a guilty verdict, we can guarantee certain things. If we go to a full trial with the aggravated strangulation, we have the potential to lose it. I've heard those arguments among prosecutors before. Like, it's better to have something than nothing. But at the same time, I'm like, well, look at the case that you have. And ideally, again, the way the statutes are laid out and the way the law enforcement investigations are supposed to function is that not only do we have perhaps statements, but we also know that victims can recant due to fear of
Yeah.
reprisal and threat and harassment. But you always build your case as if the victim will never testify. And so what we should have in place is good photographic documentation. We should have good medical exams. We should have medical professionals that are on board ready to interpret for the court what the medical findings are. And those, in fact, should speak on behalf of the victim. And but even with that, I've heard prosecutors say, "Well, it still may come down to a he said, she said, or our jury's not fully understanding." Well, I'm sorry, but as a prosecutor, that's your job, is to educate the jury and to some degree educate the judge as well. I mean, certain statutes in certain states outside of strangulation does require some judicial training. Well, I think a strangulation law should also require some level of judicial training, not in what not just with what the elements of the law are, but what this pattern of assault generally leads to. And so then beyond those individuals, is just a public awareness of the dangers of strangulation as well. I mean, does the public know what strangulation points to? Uh, Also, outside the general public is you also have your other professionals, your medical professionals, your paramedics, your EMTs, your triage nurses, your emergency room doctors, your victim advocates. Ideally, this knowledge that we're talking about now and what these studies show us should be common knowledge and should be known to everybody so that when a time does come up where there's a plea to a misdemeanor, which could be granted a pretrial intervention type program, and the record explained. I mean, I've seen that happen. I've seen someone charged with a felony, pled down to a misdemeanor, and then if they stay out of trouble 2 or 3 years later, they have their record expunged, and it's like nothing ever happened.
But
But the
strangulation is
more people,
such a key indicator of what could happen now. It feels like that's something. I mean, hey, I'm all for second chances. I'm
Mhm.
all for second chances, especially when something isn't violent or if something is tied to addiction. I'm all for second chances on that stuff. But the moment a domestic partner just like loses it for a moment and grabs a neck, that to me that is like sirens, lights, red flags going everywhere. I tell my channel all the time, if somebody tells you that they want to do harm to you, you must believe them. They want to do harm to you. And if somebody's grabbing your neck, then to me that should be a different classification, right? Just a
And well,
different
in the
level.
realm of criminal justice, especially as a law enforcement officer, we have to think about actions and words separately, but also combined together. I mean, if I say I'm going to punch you, okay, those are words, those are a threat. And if I have the ability to carry out the threat at the time I give it, there are a lot of laws that say I can be charged with some form of assault.
Yeah.
Then there's other times where my actions could demonstrate my intent without my words. So I tell, if you're walking down an alley and some guy comes out with a knife and has this crazy look in his eye and is, walking at you with this knife in your direction and getting closer and closer by the second, I mean, you kind of like, all right, I think this person intends to do me some harm. And, and so when you look at those things separately, actions and words, and the times that those are combined, it puts in an even more ominous picture. And in this particular case, there are claims that he told her, and she explained to people that he said he could kill her at
Right.
any time.
Yeah.
Well, when someone utters those type of words, it must be taken with seriousness. But unfortunately, a lot of people, sometimes in the situation, but outside the situation, well, they're just blowing smoke, or they're
They're
just being,
drunk. Yeah.
yeah, or something like that. But as a law enforcement officer and as people that investigate these type of things, we tell people if they're uttering those words, they have thought about it. It doesn't come out of your mouth unless you form the thought to make the words. Just like when someone says they're suicidal. Well, suicidal is potential homicidal. If you want to hurt yourself, you want to hurt anybody, and well, I'm going to do myself in. Well, you need to take these things seriously.
Yeah.
But yeah, words and actions tell us a lot about people's propensity.
Let's get into what it was that he said. Let me just read this here real quick. It says, and this is from the affidavit from January 11th. It says, Columbus Police Homicide Unit Team 2 was advised, responded, initiated an investigation. This is after people called, Dr. Tepe is missing kind of thing. He didn't show up for work. Early on in the investigation, detectives were advised by identifiable friends and family of Monique Tepe that Monique had told them her ex-husband, Dr. Michael D. McKee, had been abusive and had made numerous threats on her life during and after the marriage. Numerous, so more than one. I would imagine. I would imagine there were a lot. Uh, an identifiable witness told detectives that Monique Tepe had shared an allegation against Michael McKee of forced unwanted sex. That is SA. That's what that is. We don't use the word on YouTube, right? That is the R word, just so we all understand it. Forced unwanted sex. That means that her husband SA'd her, and of strangulation, which is obviously what we're talking about here. Another identifiable witness told detectives that Michael D. McKee had told Monique that he could, like you just said, Brian, could kill her at any time and would find her and buy the house right next to her, that she will always be his wife. To me, this screamed movie plot. This is full out of Sleeping with the Enemy, right? This is somebody that can't let go. He's he's loved and lost. That sounds horrible, but like, and he's just unable to take defeat, right? To take the loss. I mean, I would,
Think about this comparative here. The controller of life. I mean, when you're strangling somebody, you literally have their life in your hands. But then you compare that to this idea of, well, I will buy the house right next to you. You will never be out of my life. That is him still trying to control life. Maybe in a different capacity, threats and intimidation, but this guy's got a control problem. Um, and life has always had a control problem. And these were these indications that have now come out. I mean, of course, I don't know what, if any of this information was shared previously with law enforcement, or if there's a history of incident reports or anything like that.
I've wondered
But
that
it goes,
myself.
yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. You don't have to be a law enforcement officer, a judge, a victim advocate to have a need to know about the dangers of strangulation, because I do a lot of presentations outside all these different professions. I mean, I train doctors, nurses, lawyers, law enforcement, victim advocates, but I also talk to civic groups. And I tell them that more often times than not, they will be the first people that will hear about it before some professional. It's the friends and the family with the Gabby Petito case. That was present in the Gabby Petito case too. The Gabby Petito case, Gabby, her social media presence painted one picture, but what people knew about that situation with her boyfriend Brian was quite different than the online persona.
So
And
if we take this from the perspective, which I always try to do it on my channel, of trying to learn something here, right? Like it unfortunately is too late for Monique and Spencer Teppy. And we certainly don't want to blame them for the behavior of their assaulter and their attacker and their murderer, right? But moving forward, because it's completely understandable, I think it's totally human nature to say, oh, I just got away from him. I can just stay away from him. Or, or maybe on the other side of the spectrum, he didn't really mean it. I just love him so much. There's a broad spectrum here. And I think it's perfectly natural human behavior. It's like human nature doesn't change. That's just how we're made. But for those of us who really want to learn and make a change in our own lives, what are some of the things that you train people to do when either they are in a position where somebody has put their hands on them, somebody has put their hands around their neck, somebody has threatened them multiple times, somebody has said, has engaged in this coercively controlled behavior like we saw with, that is alleged with JP Miller down there in your neck of the woods, or here where he's saying, full on sleeping with the enemy style, you're never getting away with me. Yeah, you're never getting away from me. I will buy the house next to you. In fact, one person I have heard thought that maybe that day on December 6th, where Dr. McKee allegedly entered the curtilage of the Teppies' home while the Teppies were at the Big Ten Conference Championship. And that same day, when Monique left the championship to go back to the hotel, she was so upset over something about her ex-husband. Could it possibly be that he was at the neighbor's house taking photos of himself at the neighbor's house, doing something so just evil? Is that what he was doing? What do you train people to do when either they are the direct victim, or Brian, maybe something like this is happening to my daughter and I'm learning about it. What is it that I should be doing, as I learn about these things?
yeah, well, again, going back to what we said at the beginning, that non-fatal strangulation is a red flag, number one indicator of future homicide. When I tell people, or when they've expressed to me the idea, what, like the same question, what do I do? First thing is we got to get distance. We have got to get physical distance between this strangler, this abuser, this individual, and the target of their abuse or their control. Now that can vary when it comes down to resources. Some people offer their own house, some people put people up at a hotel, some people buy a bus ticket, some people tap into grant programs and civic program resources in their area. But the first thing is trying to find a place of safety that is separate and apart so physically this abuser, this controller can't get to you. Number two, particularly if it's more acute, if the person has recently been strangled, and I say recently, I'm talking about within the last couple weeks, even 30 days, you need to get medical attention immediately. Not every medical facility is going to be um, as versed or know as much about non-fatal strangulation as perhaps another. Going to the emergency room is what I would recommend. Um, However, even going to the emergency room, most emergency room doctors haven't had specific training on non-fatal strangulation, but when an individual does go to the emergency room and they're first interviewed by triage and check-in, the words that need to be uttered are, "I need to speak to a forensic nurse or an SA nurse examiner." The reason being is because those nurses have specific, very, very specific training in exams, safety protocols, triage, exam that are specific to strangulation. They see things with a better eye. They know what exams to do. They know what to look for, and then can advise the emergency room doctors on the next steps to take for higher levels of intervention.
Now,
Um,
and
and
I'm sorry to
then
interrupt, but real quick, do
yeah,
most hospitals have a nurse trained like that? A forensic nurse?
so most of your larger cities and larger hospitals will have on staff what we call forensic nurse examiners or SA examiners. Those are called SANE, SANE nurses. Essentially, they're the same thing, they just have different titles. But most larger municipal hospitals, when you get into your outlying, smaller rural areas, they probably don't. However, um, there are some mechanisms built into these areas where if that medical facility doesn't have one of those specific nurses, there's an on-call team of a professional in that area that can travel to that location to meet with that particular patient.
Okay,
But
good.
that's some key wording to mention is I need to speak to a forensic nurse. And I mean, use the word strangulation. I mean, most people are going to use the word choking, which is mechanically and technically not the correct term, but the medical staff will understand what the person's referring to. And let's just reiterate something that you and I have discussed on prior interviews. When someone's strangled, they may have no external signs of injury.
Right.
That is very, very common. And so medical staff and even law enforcement may tend to minimize or discredit, but that person's experience or the experiences viewed by a third party or witnesses or family need to be taken seriously with that strangulation exam protocol.
Now, I interrupted you, but you started with physical distance and then get an
Mhm,
examination by a forensic nurse examiner. What's the
mhm.
next step?
And the next step is documentation. I cannot overemphasize documentation or reporting, but it is not unusual for individuals of many different types of abuse and assault to just simply talk to their friends and family. And sometimes those friends and family don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And let's just be fair. A lot of those that are abused are fear of retaliation and reprisal. And I get it.
Yeah.
That's
Let me interrupt here for just a second because there is a comment that I want to grab from Redondo Beach 7514. Gavin, can I get you two to help influence the LA County District Attorney's Office to take my strangulation case? I did more investigation than the police. So I don't know that um, I don't know that I have any power over anybody to do any kind of, you know, taking of a case. However, I do want to point out that Brian has a Facebook. I'm going to bring it up here. It's in the description below. He has a Facebook profile called the Clearview Justice Training and Consulting. Um, if you just search Clearview Justice Training and Consulting, I think you'll find it. Now, the other thing that I would tell anybody in this kind of situation, okay, is that it takes so much patience. I remember talking with Tom Brennan, who is the retired Pennsylvania State Police homicide investigator and the guy who's doing all the pro bono work for Josh and Sandy Greenberg. He told them, he told me that he told them, this is going to take 12 years. It's going to take 12 years and it's going to cost you a lot. Are you willing to do it? Right. And of course, in Josh and Sandy's case, not only were they willing to do it, but they were able to do it. So just know that. And it took a lot for Josh and Sandy to get the media aboard. The only person who was aboard in the beginning was Stephanie Farr from the Philly Inquirer. I came on well after she did and started talking about that case. And others did too. Nancy Grace, Joseph Scott Morgan, so many others, right? But it takes a lot of grit, a lot of determination, and continual work to try to get any movement in any of this. Think about this. Josh and Sandy have been at it for 15 years. And they've gotten maybe a win or two over the course of those 15 years. They've racked up a lot of L's. So I don't want to bring you down. I'm just saying you've got to get your well, I was going to use a term that my grandfather would use for his muck boots. You got to put on the muck boots and be willing to kick the muck. This is what I'm saying. Okay. I don't think I have any sway, but if you can get many of us to do it, in fact, why don't you reach out to Brian through Clearview Justice and Training, Training and Consulting, and then reach out to me on my website, gavinfish.com. Click on the little icon up here in the corner that looks like an envelope. That will get you to a form where you can reach out to me. But I can't guarantee anything. I get a lot of requests, and I don't have tons of power on this. Maybe someday I will, but for now, I just really don't. Thank you very much for your comment, and thanks for being, I guess, good job being a survivor. Very impressive. Okay, I'm going to keep this going here.
One of the biggest barriers to reporting. We know that all forms of abuse are underreported. We know. However, in spite of that, we have to stay consistent and reliable to the message. Report, report, report. We need documentation. And why is that important? Well, it can be important with the initial or what's happening right now, but it also has a lot of weight into things that can happen in the future. So if individuals need to get a protective order of some kind, here in our state we call them orders of protection. Other states may call them some type of IPV, intimate partner violence order, different terminology, but essentially the same thing. Those groups need documentation. And
Yeah.
if you go up there and
Hey, Redondo Beach, listen to this particular spot, okay? Document. I'll keep it going.
you swear and affirm, okay, that is good. And those courts are not a criminal court. It's proof beyond, excuse me, it's a preponderance of the evidence in those type of courts. But testimony is not seen as being the strongest, but documentation is much stronger. So people need to understand, just because you file a police report, which is what I recommend, it doesn't mean that a criminal charge is going to take place. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily going to be a criminal investigation. It depends on the seriousness of the crime. But I would say when it comes to strangulation, there should be an investigation in spite of what a victim may want. Um, but documentation is critically important for the order protection or restraining order type of hearings. But thinking about what has transpired with this case, ultimately there being a homicide, we want to prevent that homicide. So if other charges can be made in the future, um, and the pattern and history of the abuser can be referred to, um, that can help strengthen arguments for higher sentences, um, being dismissed or not approved for, pretrial programs and holding the offenders, more accountable.
Yeah.
So I can't overemphasize documentation. It's
Well, one of
we
the
don't have enough of it, quite frankly.
one of the things that surprised me in this case, and maybe it's my own naivety, in fact, I think some of my viewers called me out on it, and I appreciate them for doing that, was it just, I mean, we're talking about highly educated, high earning people on both the victim side and on the alleged perpetrator side here. It shocked me that I'm like, wait a minute, he's a vascular surgeon. Wait a minute, she holds a master's degree in education. She's married to a doctor, of dental surgery herself. This is crazy that this is happening. But I would imagine, Brian, that it really doesn't matter what your socioeconomic background is, what your education level is. Probably doesn't matter. A lot of those things that we use to divide ourselves in society probably don't matter. This is probably something that happens across the spectrum of society. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. I mean, all the cases I've seen in my 26 plus years of law enforcement, uh, domestic violence and strangulation is no respecter of socioeconomic status. I mean, money, prestige, where you live has got nothing to do with the frequency, the amount of force, the terror, the control that is present in these type of situations. And I find it very ironic that the suspect in this case is a vascular surgeon. I mean, of
Right.
anybody that knows about the restriction of air or blood flow to the brain, it's that guy. I
Yeah.
mean, he hasn't specifically trained in strangulation. His basic understanding of gross anatomy and vascular function is enough for him to know that what he was doing, what was alleged he did, was absolutely dangerous.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, because you talked about physical distance, but in this case, Monique Tepe was physically distant from Dr. McKee.
Mhm.
I think it just so happened with this guy, he had the means, because let's face it, the ability to travel, whether we're talking about your travel throughout the city on your daily commute or traveling the world, but the ability to travel uh, is a privilege of the rich, right? And the more money you have, the more freedom you have to travel. It seems like in this world, I don't think a lot of people would disagree with me on that one. Economists have studied that for years and years. But Monique was thousands of miles away from Dr.
Mhm.
McKee for years, and at
Mhm.
least hundreds of miles away for years as well. But it wasn't. It does well. And this is not me blaming her. This is for
Yeah.
us to learn, right? But
Mhm.
what about things like being distant on social media? Like if I had
Mhm.
an abuser, um, I would probably think twice. And I think you're the perfect person to answer this. I have a first cousin who, in the beginning of the internet, where I wanted to publish to all of my cousins everybody's contact information, my cousin was like, "Do not
Mhm.
put me on that list." Right? I do
Mhm.
not want any presence on the internet. And I think in today's society, it's very, very difficult outside of law enforcement who are trained specifically and understand the reasons why social media can be so dangerous. But how does one, first of all, am I right in my hypothesis here that there has to be digital distance from your
Mhm.
abuser as well? And number two, how does one accomplish that in the modern age?
Yeah, no, so thank you for refocusing this as far as the distance. Let me just say real quick when it comes to physical distance, uh, as you correctly stated, I mean, us traveling or people traveling many miles to do something, it doesn't completely eliminate the risk. It just makes the attempt of that individual harder. Now, what would have been further still was sequencing of location. So when I say distance, if you can have physical distance and keep your location secret, if you can, that's another level of difficulty the person has to work through. If there had been some type of protective order in place that related to this gentleman keeping a physical distance, not just from her and her husband, but also places that they frequent, like the home, it is entirely possible that while they were out that football game, if there was evidence that he was at their property, criminal charges might have come out of that because of the existence of an order of protection and violating that at the time. So people say, well, that's just a piece of paper. A piece of paper doesn't stop a bullet. A piece of paper doesn't stop a person. Well, that's true, but it does give law enforcement the authority when they have the right evidence to then act on that victim's behalf to enforce some type of action rather than not being able to enforce anything at all. With respect to digital footprints, this is incredibly difficult these days. This is a discussion. I've had this discussion many, many times, and the first reality is that I always promote a complete break in every way, shape, or form. Now, if people have children in common, the courts force a communication between divorced or separated parties with common children. It's because of visitation rights and child custody and that sort of thing. So there's not a complete break there. But if you can manage a complete break, that's what I suggest. And the digital footprint, the blocking, um, it helps. But the problem with that is that an abuser or controlling person's ability to create new accounts, fabricate their identity,
Yeah.
the ability for technology to track people not just through their phones and tablets and but also their cars. And so it's getting incredibly more difficult for people to erase their digital footprint. And even if there's this complete break between like the two accounts, the fact that there's mechanisms out there and apps that will um, data mine hundreds of millions of points of data and then come up with and spit out some information and that is usable um, and still available to the abuser makes it incredibly hard. But I tell people, do everything you can within your power to limit the interaction between themselves and the abusive party, whether it's your cell phone contacts, your email, your social media. Make reports there too if someone's harassing you. But again, I can't tell you how many cases I've dealt with stalking and harassment where uh, people have done that, and um, the individual just keeps creating new accounts and,
Yeah.
15, 20, 30 accounts out there to, still get at the individual. But let me give you another side of this coin real quick, though. For some, they want to keep tabs and they want to keep communication on that abuser because they want to be in the know of what they're doing and perhaps what they're planning, rather than being caught completely flat-footed.
Mm.
No one probably knows the abuser better than the person that was targeted. And
Yeah.
so some choose, um, now we would say against their own interest, but in their mind, they can rationalize it is in my interest to see where my abuser is frequenting with restaurants and pictures that I see or little comments that come up because something that may seem very innocent to friends and family, like, oh, I think I should just send you a dozen roses. People think that's, well, how great does that sound? But to the target of some abuse, that may be that one line that was repeated, like, "If you ever get a dozen roses, that's the
Yeah.
day that you're not gonna exist anymore." And
Yeah.
so some individuals choose to, for lack of a better description, be informed, but in a very unique and odd way to people on the outside looking in.
Well, I mean, it does feel a little catch-22 here. Obviously, it ended in absolute horror and tragedy for Monique, Spencer, and their children. I keep reading these affidavits that say that the two children were unharmed, and I keep adding they were physically unharmed, sure, but they are harmed for the rest of their life, and so is everybody else who love these people. But I hope that this part of the conversation will help somebody who may be in a situation that's similar to have some ideas on what it is that's supposed to do. Brian Bennett is the chief of everything at Clearview Justice Training and Consulting. He's a retired state law enforcement officer and trainer. Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure to be with you again.
Yeah, and I'd like to just reiterate my thanks to Brian Bennett for coming on and talking about this. He is, to my knowledge and to my satisfaction, one of the preeminent law enforcement side experts of strangulation and DV. Thank you all for your comments while we were playing that. You guys always keep it classy. I really love how everybody just behaves and how our mods moderate. Thank you, mods, for doing that. Let's see. I think there's Mooney's saying thank you, Mr. Bennett. Heather whatever is saying great information. Brian is absolutely the best. I know that we're running a little bit long, but you know what time it is for now? You know what time it is? Got to get the right button. I mean, Javi needs to get the right buttons up. It's 3 questions. Here we go.
It's 3 questions with Gavin Fish.
Pow. All right, guys, you know the rules. And if you don't, here, let me just explain them. I will answer the questions that you send to me to my email address, 3questions@gavinfish.com. 3questions@gavinfish.com. Spell it out, THRE, questions@gavinfish.com. I will endeavor to do my best to answer all the questions. What I ask of you is to also endeavor to do your best to answer the questions in the live chat, because sometimes I just love your responses to this. And I'll give you a little bit of time to get your little thumbs working so that you can give me the answers that you would have. Question number 1 is, what's one thing that's legal that you would make illegal? This is very simple and important. I think it should be illegal to not use a coaster for your drink on a wooden surface. I think there should be a law. That's what I think. I'd love to hear your comments on that. Question number 2. Have you met any celebrities? Yeah. More than my fair share, I guess. I spent a good portion of my career working in high-end audio. For some of that, for about 4 or 5 years of that, I was the chief innovation officer, and before that, the vice president of a company that manufactured high-end digital to analog converters. And by high-end, I mean like super high-end. I think our entry level was at about $30,000 for a single stereo component for consumers. And so when I was promoted to CINO, Chief Innovation Officer, I would be sent, actually I did it as VP too, I'd be sent all over the world. If you bought our DAC, I would come and install it. So yeah, I've met a lot of celebrities, most of whom are performers in the music space. Almost all. And then I've met some fascinating people that maybe don't have celebrity, but have made an impact on the world that is so big that you can't hardly even believe it, but you don't know who that person is or what that person's name is. For example, and I think this is when I found this out, I won't say his name, but one of like 2 people who brought the world the compact disc is an acquaintance of mine through work. And like nobody knows his name. Most people think Sony, Philips, Magnavox. And yeah, they're right, but it was two guys who did it. And it changed the world. It brought us out of the analog era and into the digital era. So yeah, I've met a lot of them. I don't think I'll drop any names because that was kind of some of the one of the benefits of having me out to wherever you were was that I just made sure that you kept a low profile on those things. So, but the answer is yes. Question number 3. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be? My 18-year-old self was so deeply afraid of failure. I still suffer from this, by the way, but when I was 18, it was so bad. I was so deeply afraid of failure and how it would make me look, and that's the key thing, that I just would avoid anything that challenged me enough to make me feel like I was going to fail at it. And I would tell my 18-year-old self that it's okay to lose. Losing doesn't make you a loser. It makes you a person who has experienced loss. The winners bounce back from loss. And it took me 15, 20 years to come to terms with that after I was 18. And I still struggle with it, right? But in fact, one of the main pushbacks I had to my buddy Rick Tracewell when he said we ought to go on YouTube is I thought, well, what if we don't do well? And he was like, who cares if we don't do well? What does it matter? Okay, yeah, we'll do it. So those are your 3 questions. Now, while you are thinking about how you would answer those questions, let's take a look at some headlines.
True crime headlines.
Pow. Okay, join me over here if you will. This one seems apropos of tonight. An article that came out yesterday on 10 TV out there in Ohio. Newly unsealed court affidavits are shedding light on the evidence Columbus police say they have against Michael McKee in the shooting deaths of Monique and Spencer Tepe. Blah, 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 blah. But I liked this. Friends described Monique as a kind and positive presence who was deeply devoted to her family. Quote, her aura was just like so bright, so loving, so inclusive. And you can see it, can't you? You can see it in pictures like this. Just think of those descriptions. So bright, so loving, so inclusive, said Ariana Turner, a friend of Monique. Turner said her children attended the same preschool as Spencer and Monique Tepe's 2 children, and the families became close while navigating pregnancies together. She was just such a positive person, Turner said. Anytime I've seen her, she always had something positive to say. Turner said she was heartbroken and shocked to learn of her friend's death. DV advocates say cases like this highlight the complexity of abuse and why it can go unreported. You've got doctors, you have nurses, you have all these different types of people out here that can be an abuser, said Callie Smith of Columbus Public Health. There's no look to being an abuser. You can be sitting next to an abuser and not even know it. And of course, I think that reinforces what Brian taught us tonight. Next headline. Thank you to Kate Bird, who writes for CrimeCod, my true crime news website. Let me bring up CrimeCod. If you go to my website, gavinfish.com, CrimeCod articles are always published right to the homepage of my website, but you can also go to crimecod.com. Here's an article from Kate Bird, which we're not going to get to. Kate brought up this article to me. This has to do with Lily and Jack Sullivan, stepfather, Daniel Martel, of missing Nova Scotia children facing charges involving an adult, so not involving the kiddos. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have confirmed that Daniel Martel, 34, has been charged with SA, assault and forcible confinement involving an adult. He is the stepfather of Lily and Jack Sullivan, who went missing in Lansdowne, Nova Scotia, nearly 9 months ago. The CBC's Allie Thompson has the story. Daniel Martel, I think this is a transcript of the video. The stepfather of 2 Nova Scotia children who disappeared nearly 9 months ago has been charged with SA, assault and forcible confinement, CBC News has learned. Nova Scotia RCMP confirmed that Martel was arrested on Monday and is facing 3 charges involving an adult complaint. Martel is due in Pictou Provincial Court on March 2nd, and then it goes into the details of the investigation. Let's see, and yeah, we continue to gather information. Whatever evidence we're able to find, we'll make our decisions based on that. So, of course, there's speculation that, like, who is the adult victim in this alleged assault, forcible confinement, and SA. We do not know the answer to that question. The person that comes to mind, and I'm sorry that this is totally speculation, but could it be Malia Brooks Murray, his common law spouse? We do not know yet, and Canada doesn't like to give out that information easily, so we will find out. Last one that I would bring to you is a quick report from today. In the double murder trial of Brendan Banfield, who testifies he confronted a stranger fatally stabbing his wife. So he's sticking to his story. The Virginia man on trial for the killing of his wife and another man testified Thursday that he yelled police when he burst into a bedroom at his home and found his naked spouse on the floor with a stranger. He yelled police? Okay. Brendan Banfield, who is accused of conspiring with Brazilian au pair Juliana Perez Magalhães to kill his wife, Christine Banfield, and the stranger, Joe Ryan, is a former IRS agent. Let's just bring up, here's a picture of Christine, and here is a picture of Joe Ryan, the victims of at least Juliana Perez Magalhães and the alleged victims of Mr. Banfield. Banfield said he went up to the upstairs bedroom because he heard somebody having sex and found his wife with Ryan. Brendan, he has a knife, his wife cried out. Brendan testified. Banfield, under questioning by his lawyer, John Carroll, said he told Ryan to drop the knife. Ryan refused. He said that she was his and that she gave herself to me, Ryan declared, according to Banfield, and Christine kind of yelled, moaned. I did not want to shoot him, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to read any more of this because I think it is all bunk. Bunk, in my opinion, of course. But that is what he testified to. He is sticking to the story that he just happened to come in and Ryan was assaulting his wife. Yeah, that checks. No, it doesn't check. Come on, man. Those guys are your headlines.
True crime headlines.
Pow. Okay, a couple last comments before we go. Tina Lucille says, let's see. Oh, just refreshed. Question 1. What should be illegal? Willful ignorance. Question 2. I've met several celebrities. Some were real disappointments. And question 3. Don't drink alcohol is what you would tell your 18-year-old self. Nice. Emmy says she's met Shaquille. Oh, these aren't coming up. Sorry, guys. So let's do this one from Tina. And then Emmy says she has met Shaquille O'Neal. Very cool. Very cool. Let's see. Dogs discussions about the 18-year-old. I could write a book about that one. Where do I begin? That's funny. And Philip Carter, I think, thinks that taxes should be illegal. Many people believe they are. I am not one of those. Welcome, Mary, to being a YouTube member. Glad that you are a fanatic. Thank you so much. Let's see if there's anything else that I'm missing. I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything. I think, and yeah, Mooney adds, hopefully Banfield will be held accountable to his crimes. Tina also has met Shaquille O'Neal. Very, very cool. I once, this is another Paris story, and this is not a tangent because we were talking about this, but this is another Paris story. I'm not going to say who they were, but there are some celebrities that are, they have reached an incredible level of fame, but most people don't know what their faces look like. And I one time was in Paris having dinner with a friend and his friends. And when we left, he told me who his friends were, and it blew me away. Like, I had no idea. I had no idea. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. All right, guys. We'll be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, right here on this channel. Please remember to go check out, first of all, check out crimecod.com, my true crime website. Check out Kate's writings, Jake's writings. Sometimes I write. And by the way, if you would like to write for CrimeCod, if you want to be trained on how to write in the AP format and report responsibly, so forth, you can reach out to me on my website, gavinfish.com. Click on this little envelope icon up in the upper right-hand corner and fill out the this contact me form, and I will happily send your information on to my team, who will vet you and probably reach out to you. Also, while you're on my website, see this little fishy icon also in the upper right-hand corner? That will take you to the Fish Tank on Facebook. You are always welcome to hang out with us on Facebook if it's your thing. No pressure, just an open invitation. Last thing, because Nightbot was acting up, you see on my website the Support Me tab, that is going to load a page that will show you all the different ways that you can support me beyond liking, subscribing, and commenting, which I deeply appreciate. But down at the bottom, you can buy Autumn a coffee. She's our lead mod, and Nightbot just wasn't working with her tonight. So I just want to point that out. Autumn works hard, and if you feel up to it, again, no guilt. It's just an invitation to support my team, specifically Autumn, who is my lead moderator. With that, I shall bid you adieu for the evening. Thank you very much for being here, and I will check you on the next one. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.